Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Joint School District 171 on November 18th, 2024. Can you hear me? No? I'm on. Test, test. Test. Good now? Okay. All right. Welcome to the Joint School District 171 meeting of November 18th, 2024. Carmen is absent. In her stead, we have Farah. Farah, could you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Trustee St. Germain.
Here.
Trustee Craig. Trustee Daniels. Trustee Kepke.
Here.
Trustee McIntosh.
Here. Okay. We have a quorum. Powerful quorum. Please rise and join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. We have a consent agenda, which includes payment of bills, budget, the budget summary to date, and financial reports. We have these statements in a.
Do we need to,
Oh, thank you very much.
Chris, do we need
So
to do
that's
number
the final.
5 first?
Do we need to approve the minutes?
Oh, I blew by that because it didn't have a link on my printed thing. Yeah. Yes, if we could get a motion to approve the minutes from October 21st work session and regular session.
I'll make a motion that we approve the October 21st work session and regular meeting minutes with the amendment that Trustee Craig was there in person and not by phone.
I'll second.
Yeah, and discussion around that is we thought maybe he was late, but he was there in person. So, okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now we can move on to the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Do you need it spelled out of the what it includes
good.
or no?
No.
Okay.
I'll second.
Yeah, as presented. Okay. Any discussion? Questions on the budget? Okay, I didn't either. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Moving on to reports and recognitions. I've got a note, so excuse me for a minute. I was super excited to read that Deidre Jenkins is taking on the Gifted and Talented program. So I had a question, is that district-wide?
It is,
So,
yeah.
excellent. That's
She's
excellent.
agreed to be our district coordinator.
Yep. Okay. That's excellent. And then we finally have a logo, a new revised logo. And I don't know, I hope you've all seen it. It's actually quite beautiful. And Jovi Harp created that logo.
Yeah.
And is there any recognition other than that?
I just plan to recognize him, in some social media posts and things like that. I emailed him this afternoon and he was excited and,
Yeah.
humbled. So
Yeah.
his design was altered just slightly by the leadership team, but it was his idea.
And is the plan to add any color to that, or are we going to leave it black and white?
It'll be black and white. It depends on the application. So,
Mhm.
it could be, we were talking about that for different applications, that it looks nice with some color.
Yeah. I was
But
thinking about my new
a lot of our-
fleece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was
Did
a
you
discussion
see
about
it?
royal
No.
blue
Oh,
and
it's
seen
pretty
it.
black and
cool.
gold.
Yeah.
It's in the superintendent report.
I guess
Oh.
I looked at it.
I looked at that.
Yep. And it didn't show up when I looked yesterday, but today when I looked,
Oh.
it was on.
Oh,
there.
that's probably why.
Pretty cool.
Oh, yep, there it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
So I want to get are we gonna have someone with embroidery have it? Do we have that business? Have we had that discussion? Do we have anyone that does our embroidery work for us?
We have lots of businesses that have done embroidery for us.
Okay, so maybe we should put together a collective order. So celebrating Joby.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any recognitions they want to call out?
This weekend we had the youth wrestling tournament up here at the high school, and Jason and Russell helped us make sure the internet was working for lots of computers, which was complicated. And Earl was here Friday night, all night late with us, helping set up everything, and then was here bright and early at 6:15 to open the building for us, and probably didn't get out of here until after 5, maybe 6 that next day. So appreciate his help in making sure that all of that ran smooth, and the bathrooms were restocked for us and all of the things. So that was awesome to have him helping.
That is awesome. On that note, I saw, I'll get to a question where to get to Cavendish. Teresa, did you have any?
I didn't.
Nothing
no,
call out?
just-
Okay, all right, excellent. The PLC presentation. I'm excited for this, girls. Ready?
Well, can I, hold on one sec, can I highlight something on my board report?
Absolutely.
Before we move to that. Get up to it.
You'll have the chance down below too.
I think this is just on my board report, so it's not in, I'll verify real quick. Yeah, it's just in my board report, so I want to talk a little bit about the Thrive and Shine
Oh, yeah, it's fun.
staff recognition program that I'm wanting to get off the ground this week. I gave you a hard copy of at your table of parts of it. I shared it with Chris earlier, as well as the leadership team. So I've been I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and studying school marketing specifically, and observe the power of our positive stories when they get shared, and also the negative stories when they get shared, and how that affects us. And so I wanted to implement a system where we have a formal way to recognize positive stories of good things that are happening in our district, aside from recognizing a staff member or something. And I really wanted to have a way for the community to be able to do that. And so this program, I'm calling it Thrive and Shine 171. It's an attempt to provide a vehicle for people to be able to submit their positive stories. I ran into a parent at OES a couple weeks ago, and he was just going on and on about how he's had 3 great teachers so far, and it's been a really positive experience for his child. And so I want to be able to collect those stories and share them out and tell our stories so that we can build our brand, and so people know, the positives as well as the negative. So, the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to send out the information via email, social media. It has links so that people can easily submit their stories, whether it's just a little thing like Earl helped me set up for the wrestling tournament. It was awesome. And then when those will come to me, I'm also going to have cards so that if people don't have electronic access or don't like doing that, they can fill out a card. They'll be in all the buildings, as well as on the second sheet. That's a draft flyer where you could scan it, the QR code. So I'll collect these stories and then I'll reshare them. And so I'll reshare them through social media. Eventually, you probably saw in the technology report that Mr. Miles and I worked on a podcasting grant to get some technology. So eventually we could be sharing them live, in a podcast format. And then I think what it'll do is it'll give the person or persons recognition for their great effort, whatever they're doing, but it'll also recognize the person who recognized them, so, Taylor wanted to recognize Earl for blah, blah, blah. So Taylor feels good, Earl feels good. And then that reflects well on our district. Eventually, I'm also going to ask local businesses if they want to be included. I'm thinking several of our businesses would probably want to contribute and sponsor some of those. So eventually we could move into like, maybe there's a little bit of a, incentive or a reward or something cool. But the whole point, that's a lot of information, but the whole point is it really matters. The story that we tell about our district really matters. And so I think the more that we share those amazing things, I think that'll build confidence and respect and, ultimately reflect well on our district. I think it'll also inspire people to, to step up even more and hopefully just, a perpetual positive, circle. So most of the information is in this handout that I gave you, but I will, this week, I wanted to send that out after you guys got to take a look at it, and I'll send it out to all of our patrons and probably have a radio spot, I think, as well. So
I think it's a great idea,
Yeah.
sharing the positive stories.
Yeah.
And hopefully not opening up another avenue for a lot of negative stories, so, but it'll
Yeah.
be moderated. So
yeah, it'll be
yeah.
moderated and it would come directly to me, and that, that's easy to,
Yeah.
that little bit of negative is fine.
When I first saw it, it made me think about the conversation I had with Miss Wickward coming on about how can we create an incentive around a positive bus riding experience and, a thriving, shining bus, and I think if we can think about more tools, programs, incentives to incentivize the positive behavior and telling that story, the better. And I think that's where the business, we're constantly going out to our business community. So I think we need to be really careful about how we couch that. But that could be a way to engage them for something meaningful.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
That's awesome.
Okay. PLC, professional learning communities, right?
Didn't have to tell you that.
I'm glad you said that, Chris, though, because I didn't know.
Set the stage.
Okay, so you probably have been seeing in our board reports and hearing in the meetings a little bit about the professional development that we've been doing as a district over the last year around PLCs. So
Russell said, can they get these on their screens too?
It's linked in the board report, so I have it pulled up.
Yes.
Cool.
That way you guys can see it.
yeah, you can
We would
pull it right
rearrange
out.
it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we're just going to start off by sharing a little bit about what a PLC is. So acronym for Professional Learning Communities. And PLC is not a curriculum or a program. It's more of a process that we have adopted as a district. It's an ongoing process. It's not one where you ever really reach the finish line, but it's a process for continuous improvement. And in this process, educators work collaboratively in teams in recurring cycles of inquiry and action research to achieve better results for students. And Becca's going to talk a little bit about 4 questions that drive those cycles of inquiry and action. Some of the key characteristics of a PLC are that we have a shared vision. So we start with the shared vision that the district has around preparing our students to thrive, wanting success for every student in the district. And then we move from there to building that collaborative culture where we can work in teams and we can have conversations around what we want our students to know and how we know if they've learned what we want them to know. And we keep moving from there. What will we do if they don't learn it? And if they already know it, what comes next? PLCs are very focused on student learning and they're focused on data-driven decision-making. So they're building assessments that align to essential standards and they're administering those assessments and looking at the data and making decisions about instruction based on that in recurring cycles.
Who are they?
That would be teachers.
Okay, thank you.
We'll walk through
The
it.
community.
Different groups and
Our,
such, yeah.
our community.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next slide.
Okay, so as Denise mentioned, these are the kind of the four crucial questions around PLC. So the first one, what do we want students to learn? Clear learning targets and standards. And that the process of PLC is identifying what those standards and learning targets are going to be. So the teacher groups that collaboratively get together. How will we know if students have learned? So one of the key pieces of PLCs is common formative assessments, so that students are taking the same assessments so that you have data that's compiled so you can compare the student learning. And then we go, what did we do if students haven't learned that information? Interventions, supports, what can we put in place to make sure that every student is achieving that targeted standard? And then what will we do to extend the learning if students already know it? Enrichment, extension. So it's really more of a identifying what we want them to learn. What do we do when they've learned it? How do we know if they learned it? If they haven't got it, if they do have it already. So the whole process is focused around those four clear questions.
So when I think about if they get it
Mhm.
and they're waiting for others to catch up,
Mhm.
then is that where some of the gifted and talented stuff
That
then follows
exactly, it
into
ties
play?
in
Okay,
perfectly
thank you.
there. Yeah, and it talks about both sides of it, both that intervention piece and that enrichment piece. So we're in the process of developing those common formative assessments now, so those teachers can be all seventh graders in our district are being assessed on a specific standard, and all the teachers will know, okay, did they reach the standard? Okay, all seventh graders know this. And if they don't, how are we going to make sure those seventh graders know this topic? And if those seventh graders got it, we want to keep them going. We don't want to hold them back. How can we provide those enrichment opportunities?
So some of the benefits of PLCs are improved student achievement. So basically what we are doing by engaging in this process is we're developing what we call a guaranteed and viable curriculum. So every third grader who attends JSD 171, whether it's at Peck or Cavendish or OES or Timberline Elementary, will be focused on the same essential standards. And will be engaging in the same common formative assessments. And that would hold true for every grade level and every subject across the district. Increased student engagement, because we're really focusing on what students know and what they still need to learn. And our lessons are really designed around that, which in turn provides better student outcomes for us. Another benefit of PLCs is enhanced teacher professionalism. So the increased collaboration essentially provides job embedded professional development for teachers in recurring cycles. So they're working in teams to determine what does proficiency on this standard look like. And they're making those decisions together. And they're going out and giving these assessments, and they're coming back and looking at their data together. You know, this student was proficient because he had these characteristics in his writing, or this student wasn't because he still needed to do this. So they're engaging in those conversations around data, and they're also talking about strategies that are effective in the classroom. So if I'm working on a teacher team of 3, and I go to a data meeting and say, wow, you guys, your kids did amazing on this assessment and mine not so well. How did you teach that? It becomes professional development for teachers that need to add strategies to their, repertoire.
And when do they do that?
That's a good question. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes as far as some of our challenges. But to answer your question for right now, we're engaging in that on workday Fridays.
Okay. And how long has this process been in place? It's fairly
like
new.
Maybe about a year.
Yeah,
The
so-
last 2 years, we've really been discussing it. I would say the major implementation has happened this spring of last year and this year. We've had the most focused intention.
Yeah, nice.
Especially district wide.
Yeah.
Different schools had, varying degrees, but now
Right.
across the district.
And there's pieces that are considered, as part of the framework PLC Light, which is just getting together and teachers talking in department meetings, which we had
Yeah.
embedded in all of our buildings in some level. But this is that, like Jason said, the intentional effort behind the district wide with that guaranteed viable curriculum attached.
Yeah.
So.
And then one more benefit of that then becomes stronger school culture. So you're looking at a more positive school climate with increased morale amongst your staff and that shared sense of purpose.
Can you hang on one second?
Mhm.
You said something about curriculum.
Yeah, so the guaranteed viable curriculum, like Denise mentioned.
Okay.
So the whole process of PLC is identifying essential standards. So specific standards that we say we are going to focus on in this grade level. And so by doing that, so I think the best way I can explain it is when I started here, I struggled. I had 7 preps, didn't know what I was going to teach, and a brand new teacher. This would provide the opportunity for us to say at JSD 171, in these grade levels, we focus on these standards, and here's some common formative assessments we use to assess those pieces. And that embedded professional development, like Denise is talking about, those teachers instantly have access to what should be taught in those grade levels, making it a little bit, it's a seamless process for kids, but it also gives that teacher the toolbox they need to be successful. And the way that that's vetted out is through the data analysis that continuously happens. That's why it's a continuous process. So if we isolate that this specific standard is the focus of Q1 in 7th grade English, and they do the data, the common formative assessment, they're like, whew, okay, we need to cover this first. That gets to be continuously evaluated and rotated based on what the data is telling the teachers.
Okay, so you live in this, so. I
Yes.
don't- So we have a set of curricula. We have textbooks that we teach, right? And so within those, we have standards that are set by the State Department of Education. And we say with 171, we're going to utilize this to meet this in these ways.
I think you explained this
Sort of.
really well. Yeah, I was gonna say,
Okay.
So our standards, our educational standards are given to us by the State
Right,
Department. And
right.
right now they're common across the country for the most part.
Okay, I did not. know
There
that.
are so many standards at each grade level that you could never teach them all in one academic year. It would be impossible. Some of them, I mean, you could look at 600 different standards in a grade level. So teaching and assessing those standards in a school year, impossible to do. So
Okay.
the first step that we took on as a district was to get together in teacher teams that were as like as we could get them and take those standards out and look at them and go, okay, what can we guarantee that our kids are going to learn this year in this grade level out of this list of standards that we know are critical to moving forward. And so that's what we mean when we talk about essential standards. We're taking a look at those grade level standards or content standards, and we're narrowing those down to what we feel is very critical to a student's learning.
Okay, and what's the engagement, say, like with our workforce community and the workplace readiness stuff that's going on?
There isn't necessarily a
Time.
there's not necessarily a direct correlation to this. And this also not to be confused with curriculum adoption in any
Right.
way, right? So we're not changing curriculum, moving to different curriculum.
Mhm.
This is just about teaching very intentional to those essential standards that we've identified.
Mhm.
So in a particular course, to answer your question, we have had lots of conversation about what our kids need in the workplace with the Clearwater County Works group, for example, that we've been
Yep.
participating in for quite a while. But generally, aside from like the CTE standards, there's not an ongoing conversation in 3rd grade math relative to the workforce necessarily.
Oh, no, I understand that. But when this was first brought up several years ago, I think we started talking about maybe vertical integration
The vertical
of
alignment, yeah.
instruction, right?
Mhm.
And then that's really blossomed into this.
Mhm.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm tracking this correctly.
Yes, and that was actually one of the professional development steps that we took as a district. So while we began this work in like teams of teachers, we then got together as a district last spring, and each team put their standards up on the wall, and they went around and looked at them to make sure that they aligned from the bottom to the top or from the top to the bottom, so that we don't have any gaps in learning from grade level or content area.
And it's not a perfect process yet. Part of that is really looking, like you mentioned, we have some curriculum that people currently use, and this work will eventually inform that curriculum.
Mhm.
And what we choose to use will have better rooted understanding in why we use specific materials. And that's the nice thing about focusing on standards versus the materials themselves, is that there's still a level of autonomy available for teachers to be able to say, I know that we are going to teach reading text critically, but I want to do it with this novel versus this novel. And we don't necessarily have to teach the same things all the time. Those teachers still can have that. What brings their professionalism to it is that discernment of what they want to use materials to teach the standard itself. The assessment will be common in saying, how do we know kids have learned the task?
Mhm.
And that might be part of that data conversation. The teacher might be like, well, which short story did you use? Because my kids just didn't engage with this one and you got great scores. So what can we do to help each other?
Thank you. Just a couple of big words I didn't quite connect, so I had to
No,
ask
you're
that
good.
question.
That's our.
Okay, so one of the last benefits then of PLCs, like I said, is that stronger school culture, impacting a positive school climate, increasing staff morale, and that shared sense of purpose amongst your staff in the work that we do.
So this will be helpful too, because these are some of the kind of buzz terms that we're going to be using throughout this process. So identifying these for you. So one of the implementation steps is building our leadership capacity. So we have what's called currently in the district a guiding coalition. So the guiding coalition is the team of all of the principals, Jason, Cody, and then teacher leads. So the leads of those specific teacher teams also sit on that team together. We have 2 state coaches that have helped develop that group with us and help us work to how we can be most efficient. We've done a book study together and we're establishing our norms. That group of people will help guide this process. So it's essential for that guiding coalition to include teacher leads. So the grade level, each team of teachers has a lead and that lead sits on the guiding coalition. So for every group of 4 teachers, there's one person that kind of runs the agenda, does the norms, all of those things. And so we have that guiding coalition for the district. We also have formed collaborative teams. So we have our PLC teams. That's something that you might hear. So there's a PLC English team. There's a 3rd grade PLC team. Once we've created those groups, those are the groups that are going to be able to identify those standards, those learning targets. They say, okay, all 3rd grade teachers get together. What are we doing? Which standards do we want to focus on? Then those teams will take those standards and create the common formative assessments and say, these are the tests that we're going to give. Here's the rubrics we're going to use to score them. So that big focus on student learning. The point of them getting together is not to talk about specific students or to talk about books. It's to talk about what are the standards, how are we going to assess it, and what do we do if students are learning, and what do we do if they don't? So collecting and analyzing that data, that's kind of the point where we're at right now, is they've all administered one of their common formative assessments, had their initial data conversations, but through that process have now had to say, okay, when we create our next formative assessment, what do we need to change? And we had such rich conversations, teachers saying, maybe we need a model text bank of all the things that we all agree on make good writing, and then we can use that. Or maybe we should move to multiple choice because that's easier for the data analysis. But they've started creating tests and administering them to students and then analyzing the data to make sure students are learning. And then once they've had those data conversations, taking action. So that's where we're looking going forward. How can we, and this will get into that next piece, and the board provide enough resources and support to keep this process going. And that's where time comes into place and using things for data analysis. But really we're in step kind of 4 of this 5-step process. But again, as Denise mentioned, it's a continuous, right? So we'll go back up to 3, probably once we've done common formative assessments for a while. Are these the standards we want to focus on? Is the data showing this is where we want to be before we're at that point where we can say, across the district, this is our guaranteed viable curriculum. This is what we teach at JSD 171. So we're not there yet, but that's kind of where we're moving towards. But that's that take action step. We're not quite there yet.
Could you give us an example in secondary and then elementary about what, just talk us through how long is a common formative assessment or
Yeah.
I know they vary, but give us an idea so that we have a common understanding.
Yeah, so secondary, obviously it's content specific in that we'll have English, history, science, all of the different ones, whereas Denise will speak to this too. They started specifically in, do you guys start in reading? Math. Started in math. So we have all the way across the board. So for my teachers, it's supposed to be short. It's not supposed to be a big 20 question final assessment. We're talking about the end of a unit assessment that has maybe 3 to 5 questions. You're very quickly assessing whether or not students understand a very specific concept. And you don't want it to be too in-depth because when you're scoring that, there's too many different directions that could go. Like if as an English teacher, students can critically analyze text. Okay, how do I know? I'm going to give them a section of text. I'm going to ask them 2 questions about that text. I know they have the ability to do it. And that's with a common rubric of a scoring range of 1 to 5. Okay, where did most of the students end up? similar across the board. My science teachers have done things on small machines, 3 questions on what are the different things that you need to know on how a small machine works and assess it. And the goal is that you should be able to analyze the data within a 24-hour period and know whether or not it's working or not. It's a little bit different in elementary, but
Very much the same at the elementary level. So again, the assessments aren't long, 10 questions maybe, and they range in rigor from assessing a basic concept to being able to apply concepts that have been learned. And teachers can take a look at that data and make decisions about learning, like, wow, students really understand how to multiply. But when they have to apply that skill to problem solving, they start to break down at a certain level. So when we go back and reteach this concept, we know exactly where we have to go back in and teach again for mastery. So there's some science behind building those assessments that we're just starting to dip into. And a lot of that they are uncovering on their own in their teams. So they've already given one, like Becca said, and they're looking at those going, oh, we can get so much more information from this if we are very intentional about how we build these questions on the assessment. So
you have good buy-in then from the community.
it's gotten a lot better. I think any new initiative like this is going to come with us. You know, it's the same adoption process as anything. You have your early adopters, you're kind of a want to watch and see, and then those they're very uncertain. And I think we've seen the phases through that, but I've seen as we start to really put this work into practice, the more applicable it seems to people. They're able to say like, oh, okay, that actually helped me do this, that, and the other. And they got to sit down this last meeting and build a scope and sequence for the year. So just like, what am I teaching quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4, and have those conversations, which it's like, okay, logistically, yeah, that's probably where we're at. So I would say that we, from where we were last spring even, are continuing to move forward in the buy-in. There's still some, because the work is hard and it's a little intimidating having data conversations. So that might cause the initial like, I don't know, and this seems like a lot of work. What are we going to do with it? And since we've been consistent and really continued to lean in and had one clear message and kind of sloughed away the extra stuff too and said, okay, we're not going to have you do this and this because we're doing PLC. This is what we're doing. People buy in a lot more when that's the focus. So I think it's gotten a lot better.
Could I?
Yeah.
I don't know if I need.
yes.
Yeah, you do. Russell.
Just to add into that, the process is not without conflict, but that conflict is really constructive. Different teams have different, sequences that they teach things in, and they have different reasoning that they might want to teach it in a specific order. And that has kind of been a focus of some of the conflict that we're having now. The standards are the same, the order in which we teach them so that we can give efficient CFAs or common formative assessments is been where some of the disagreement has been in, but throughout multiple discussions, they've come to some consensus on deciding what to teach when, what they can move around, where they can be flexible in order to have better conversations. That has taken time, but it's definitely improving, and they're getting to where they're agreeing much more on it. So again, it's not perfect at this point, but it's definitely moving forward.
And this is something you guys have started at ground zero and created, and
Well,
wow.
they've
Yeah.
created, that's the
Okay.
best part about it is I think we are helping guide the work, but we're tasking them with doing the work. And as Corey mentioned too, it is a little bit of we're a very unique district in the best ways. But a lot of schools, have everybody all in one place that can easily plan in meetings and time. And then, the nuances of Timberline having teachers teaching multiple subjects, multiple preps, multiple things. And we have that a little bit down here as well. And, the challenges with teachers at Timberline not having a teacher team, people that they regularly do collaborative work with. So yeah, they're doing the work, and we put them in groups last year, and it's really, I'm really excited. There's a lot to celebrate. I look at some of our groups that, struggled to kind of find their stride at first, that sat down at this last meeting and just made beautiful scopes and sequences with intentional planning. And I'm like, whoa, this is going to change what we're doing, what we're teaching. I feel very confident that kids are going to learn because of the work the teachers are putting in. So it's been a cool experience.
Just
Awesome.
a quick point of clarification. This is a national model.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
Oh,
no, no,
okay.
We didn't make up. PLC.
Okay, I was thinking they were starting
There's
from
some-
ground
there's
zero,
some-
coming up with a
no,
lot of that, and I'm
no,
like,
this is like,
that's a lot of work. How are
and-
you guys getting that done?
Denise can speak to this a little bit, but PLC has been around for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
The main book that founded it, I was just thinking about that and had to look it up, but
Yeah.
98.
Uh,
So the concept of professional learning communities has been around for a long time.
Yeah,
I think what we saw in Idaho is that when our leadership at the state changed this last time, we had some deputy superintendents who had a lot of success with PLCs. And so that kind of became the focal mission. It's also happening in other states across the country, but that was the change we saw.
Cool.
So then we got the grant, got on, have this guiding
Okay.
coalition, so we're in the whole process.
Yeah, the state is now very supportive of this concept
Yeah.
because of the new change in leadership at the top.
And
And
it
we
does
do-
look different. Excuse me.
Our guiding coalition does continue to work side by side with the state
yeah.
mentor through that grant program. So
Okay.
I was just going to say it looks different in every district. There's all
Sure.
kinds of variations, and we have a very unique district, so it makes it interesting. It's pretty easy if you have several third grade teachers teaching ELA and math, but when
Yeah.
you're across, when you only have one, like they mentioned at Timberline, a couple down here, it makes it more challenging, especially across like electives. There might be some teachers are the only teacher in the whole district that teach a particular course. So.
really a big shift in culture though, moving away from this idea that we adopt a certain set of textbooks and we hand them to our teachers and say, okay, your job's to teach this from lesson 1 to the end of the text. And here's your pacing guide. And, you have to teach it with fidelity. Now we're saying, we're going to hand you standards and we want you to really come to understand, your profession and your role as a teacher, identify what standards you need to teach and tell us what materials are going to suit you,
Oh, interesting. So the
Yeah.
whole concept of a sort of baked and standardized curriculum committee, it needs to become flexible and more like an amoeba shape then.
Yeah, I mean, we're still going to have curriculum committees because we'll still be having conversations about what materials best suit us. But our vision for this work is that at some point in time, when we hire brand new teachers into our district, we will be able to hand them a guaranteed and viable curriculum where they can see what standards they should be teaching at their grade level and when, and they will have assessments already built for that. And then the conversations with their colleagues becomes more collaborative around what materials to use and how their students are responding.
And I think it changes the curriculum conversation as well. Those are going to be more informed conversations.
Mhm.
When I think about adopting curriculum, I want to know the why, the what, and all. And it's a tedious process to go through textbooks and different things. But we know with that guaranteed viable curriculum, like these are the things that we teach in biology. We know these are our, then we're using standards to guide the curriculum identification process, like what fits, what resource is going to supplement our instruction, not be our instruction. Because I think they should be used as resources and materials, and the teacher themselves should be saying like, we teach this. And so if a kid goes like, why are we learning this? Let me tell you, this is why, this is what we're going to do. And this is how this piece of material that I've selected for us is going to get you from point A to point B, which is why it makes that school culture piece and that student engagement piece so much higher. Because if you think about being a student in a seat and a teacher had an answer like that for you, not, okay, because this is the next chapter, turn your page, you're going to be a lot more engaged in, okay, I need to know how to do this in order to be successful in this class next. And this material is going to get me there. It's going to click a little better.
Do you think that it will also help with retention, teacher retention?
Good.
I mean, because if you have some turnover, it could spin out a little bit left or right, depending on where that teacher was, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, it would, I assume that it would be part of the team's assessment of that individual, whether they're a good fit in the district. But do you think that it could be a positive thing for our retention and
I see it as a support mechanism.
recruitment?
Because we often every teacher is going to have a tough class at some point. Like kids are going to go through and kids going to move their grade levels, or you're going to have these weird nuanced things that happen, right? And if the team is comfortable sitting there talking about data and it's your turn where you're like, my kids aren't doing well. It's not like, my kids, it's like, okay, guys, let's work together. Like my kids aren't doing well. What strategies, what support can you provide me? Because the teaching profession can be very isolating. It's very easy to close your door and just try and get it done, right? But if you have a team of people that are not only holding you accountable, but providing you solutions and support and, hey, I had that, or I experienced that, let's try this. that would, to me, from a teaching perspective, especially, I taught at Timberline, and I did my student teaching here, and in both capacities, it was always great to have somebody to kind of collaborate with, and this makes sure that happens.
Yeah, so in thinking about that and the cohorts, and we've started really talking about the data around cohorts. And so is there flexibility to adjust and to grow with a cohort? As I mean, I'm thinking about some of the, don't we have third, fourth, and fifth whiz bang in math? I'm thinking about, so are we adjusting those common standards to fit that cohort to keep them engaged and excited?
I don't know that you need to
I
change
see what you mean.
the standards, because the process itself is built to say who's learning it, who is, and who do we need to enrich. There may be some spaces where like they get it, so a whole group of them is enriching, or they move more quickly through the pacing of it.
Okay,
But
okay.
you kind of speak a little bit to that too.
Yeah, there probably won't be a lot of adjustment as far as what they think is essential for learning. They'll still stand on those essential standards every year, but when they have students who already know it, they'll go deeper with those. They'll enrich them or, work with them, teach them to a deeper level.
Okay, I was just curious.
Mhm.
There's a lot of opportunities embedded within it that allow for those types of things, and the way I think about it too is we wouldn't want to adapt the essential standards too much, because vertical alignment is a big piece of it.
Right,
Like we
right.
want to make sure, okay, and that'll only get better as we continue to teach the very standard, like guaranteed viable curriculum. It's like, okay, we know those kids learned this in 6th grade, not, I think they were supposed to cover that. I don't know if they got to it. Nope, we know that was an essential standard in quarter 3 of 6th grade. So they should know that when they get to 7th grade, which means we can just take that level of knowledge and instruction to the next level, because every kid should have the background knowledge they need. So.
It's not inclusive of everything that would be taught at every grade level, just the, essential foundational.
Yeah, there certainly would be instruction around a lot of other standards, but these are what we're guaranteeing our students will learn.
Because teachers have asked that too. You mean I have to teach a lot? Yes, we still got to teach all the things. We still got to do a full year of whatever the subject is, but we're saying that all of our kids get this stuff and they know it well.
Very intentional focus.
And then would you expect the state standard scores that you take, those scores to go up with the process over time?
I think it's easier to make targeted goals for gains in those ways too, because like you look at the state test now and you see deficits and say, okay, we know our kids really struggle with this specific component. And if you intentionally teach it, assess it, you would expect that the scores would go up in that specific area. I wouldn't say universally across the board. It's like all of our test scores are going to just skyrocket because of this, because it's got to be very intentional, and that alignment for those tests would have to also align with the standards, which again is a little bit difficult to do. But yes, it would help to make targeted goal statements and make sure you had growth. So the next slide. This one's kind of Jason and you guys too, but
So this is resource allocation.
yes. Oh no, this one's first,
Oh,
and then but this leads into resource allocation.
Okay, so just, we've only been in this process as a district for a very short time, but some of the common challenges that we've experienced are time constraints. When we talk about this being a culture shift for us and really wanting to embed this process as a way, how we do business on a regular basis, we probably need to be focused intentionally on it more than once a month on a Friday. So time constraints there, little bit of resistance to change, which we've talked about overcoming a lot of that over the course of the last year, and then resources and some potential
The constraint
solutions
around that collaboration amongst the team groups.
Mhm.
Like being able to get them together in productive amount of time. Yeah.
Yeah, when we talk about administering a common assessment and needing about a 24-hour turnaround time to score those and then sit down together and talk about your data, that time to do that needs to be embedded into a teacher's workday. And so, some potential solutions would be, having conversations about scheduling that dedicated PLC time into the day, and continuing to provide training and support, and then allocating resources for professional development as it's needed. The state provides quite a bit of what we need at this point in time, and they've engaged us in some book studies as ways to provide PD for us than the Guiding Coalition and our staff as a whole, which is a lot less expensive than having to send us out somewhere. So looking for those opportunities where we can get them. Yep. So next slide. And Jason will talk a little about how the school board can support the PLC process.
Trying to think of what wasn't said. I think the main thing I think about negotiations when we
That's what I was
discuss
just thinking about, yeah.
calendars and times. They've kind of covered it, but especially when you're talking about across schools where there's travel involved, and we do some of these via Zoom or Google Meet, but the face-to-face component is vital at times. So that's the main thing, is just figuring out how we can allocate some time. And then like Denise mentioned, sometimes professional development. The grant paid for the Guiding Coalition to do the professional development this summer when we went to Minnesota, but there will be ongoing PD that we'll need to support. And then resources, it will lead, it'll help, it'll probably lead us to identify some deficiencies in our curriculum, connecting the earlier conversation to the standards work. And we haven't seriously engaged in curriculum study for a long time, really looked deeply at, aside from buildings, analyzing, what curriculum they needed and when. We haven't done that as a district for a very long time. So I could see that being a big challenge and pretty expensive and also controversial. Curriculum, when you start talking about adopting a curriculum, it can be very controversial, trying to find the right one that fits your community standards well,
we our purpose being preparing the next generation to thrive, vision. So that's the vision that you used in setting the common assessment. I'm trying to remember your words, right? And so I think we all buy into that vision, and I'm excited about working on some sort of board mission and bigger strategic planning kind of stuff. And so I think that we are together in that, with that vision and that purpose, it's got to be helpful to you. I was thinking about negotiations when you talk about the challenges and time, and how much buy-in, and I'm not asking you to speak for the union by any means, but as I wrap my head around this and think about our role in resource allocation and in that negotiations process, how much buy-in do we have amongst the entire community? And we talked a little bit about that. They have a few naysayers still kind of holding back. But if there's more demands on the time and they're asked to put more time in, when do you think that, or what triggers do you think we need in order to get to a place where we could think about that conversation as part of that negotiations? Is that a fair question, discussion point?
I can speak to it a little bit. I think we're early in the process, and I think as teams, some teams are really beginning to see some success and are appreciating the collaboration and the support of their team. I think as those stories grow and become shared and more teams really find success, hey, my kids are doing better because of this work. That's what matters to teachers, right? It's like, in the end, my kids are doing better because of this work. The more that happens, the more buy-in we're going to have. But we're still early in. And so I would say we're a ways out probably from a tremendous amount of buy-in where the critical mass is going, let's go, although we do have a lot of excitement around it, but I think we have quite a bit of work to do before, that would be the case.
I think that unified vision piece that you're speaking about too is really important. And the lens I view it with my staff, and when I look at how I allocate their time when they do have those work days, is a big part of that. It's like, look, we're not going to do this, that, and the other, and this, that. We have state mandated trainings and things we have to do, but I kind of just said to them, this is what we're doing. And I think that helps teachers, because it was like, this is one of the 6 things I'm going to ask.
One more
you to do.
thing.
It feels like too much and you can't really lean in. And so I've just said to teachers, I said, okay, we're gonna do our PLC in the morning, and I want you to take the rest of the day to kind of restructure what you were doing in your classroom to align with the meeting that you had this morning, and not being like, okay, we're gonna meet and do this, that, and the other. So the more unified we are, and the more the board's like, okay, this is what we're doing, the better they'll feel. That's all that is.
Another important note is that there's a tremendous amount of research behind this. You know, John Hattie was kind of one of the lead researchers. We're this huge meta-analysis of all this research that says this is one of the most effective ways to improve student achievement. Collective efficacy of teachers working together, you know, with a common vision. That's the secret sauce. And so that's essentially why we're doing this, is that in the end, we believe that it's what's going to make a difference for our kids. So I think as teachers start seeing that more and more success, it'll just become more and more important.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to this.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hey, Jason, I joined a while ago, just when you.
Moving on to committee reports. Does anybody have any questions?
I didn't have any questions on them.
I had one and a little recognition too. At Cavendish, the heating system and water system had a failure. And that's too bad because we were just there last fall and everything was good. So what happened? Do we know? I mean, kudos to everybody that rose to the challenge, but
I'm going to look at heat. I'm not sure about heat.
okay. Just a question.
Was it in Roy's report?
It was in the Cavendish one, I think.
Cavendish
Oh, and
report.
Janine's.
Mhm. Yeah, she was thanking you for heat and water. So
The water system is just we're always working on the water testing up there, making sure that it's that the water meets requirements.
because it's a well.
Yeah, because
Ah.
it's a well, and so that's an ongoing process. I'm assuming the heat. I don't know what the heat was, but we
Okay.
can see in a report if there's something specific.
And then while you're looking at that, the other question I had was in Roy's report in the baseball, I think the pitching facility, is that the water line wasn't buried deep enough. Can they literally crack those lines on both ends and blow it? Yeah. I mean, he says that they have to leave the water running. Well, let's disconnect the supply and turn the supply off.
Yeah, I
disconnect
wondered
that
about that. I didn't
and-
know
and
if
blow it
they were
through.
using that building year round or,
They
Pretty
do.
much, yeah, they.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
they do. Oh,
I
okay.
believe that's why it needs
so
to
it
have
couldn't
water.
just be
So it-
winterized. Yeah.
When there's break up in it, but it does use quite a bit with our, we don't have a ton of facilities in our community.
Okay, yeah.
I see in her report, she just thanks us for getting the heat on. So I don't know the details.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Must not have been off for long, or I would know.
Yeah, and Casey's report, I don't want to hog this if somebody else has, but Casey's report and the dental, the fluoride, so at the conference, Delta Dental had a really cool little toothbrush and floss and a little toothpaste, a little container that you could have. And I complimented her because years ago when we did the Northwest area, or not Northwest area, but the Blue Cross Blue Shield Foundation, oral health care was one of the challenges that were identified in our youth population. And when I saw the report, there are a small percentage, but there are still students that have damage beyond repair. And the fact that we can partner with Delta Dental and Public Health and offer that fluoride rinse and the sealant, I think is a great thing for us. So kudos to all of you that make that happen.
That's all Casey. She sets
Casey,
it all up
and she's-
organizes it.
And she's gone today, so please share with her that I was happy about that. Okay, if there are no other questions or thoughts? Okay. Moving on, did you want to highlight anything in your report? Beyond the Thrive? Okay,
I don't think so.
okay. Miss Tammy Wyatt, it can be.
Wyatt or Tammy? Wait.
Books and in school.
Mhm.
It's okay if I don't sit.
Yeah.
I'll sit.
You're okay. Whatever you want.
It's okay if I stand.
Mhm.
I'm not much of a sitter.
Make sure your mic is on though, would you? Is the little light on?
Yes.
Thank
we go.
you. There you
Right.
go.
Well, thank you. I never intended to be a regular for the OES garden reports, but it just occurred to me, it's kind of necessary, at least spring and fall, just to keep you apprised as to what's going on down at the elementary school garden. And especially, well, I know Taylor knows, because she's kiddos in school, but Teresa, I'm not sure you realize we have a school garden.
I've seen it. I've seen
outdoor
it. Yeah.
learning area. And Jason, of course, is aware of it, but maybe doesn't know how it came about. So Russ, if you will, Orofino Elementary School Community Garden was, I will back up a little bit to a former principal, Mrs. Shelley Brooks. She had a vision for an outdoor classroom, a school garden for students and staff of JSD 171, encompassing all of the school district. So she implemented a school garden between two of the wings. And you know, actually with what she had to work with, she had some donated funds from CVH Hospital Auxiliary, I believe, and I'm not quite sure how she brought it about. I was at that time in the school, but I was just excited because I was going to be able to help kids get in the dirt. But unfortunately, and this is not a detriment to her vision, but she thought that maybe staff would be able to manage, maintain, and use that garden area. Well, even back then, that wasn't going to happen. And so it was just a handful of employee volunteers, Tamanade and myself and a few others, who would just kind of keep it going. It was really unused by staff and the students as a classroom because it really wasn't set up for that. And so it fell into disarray. Needed some repairs. Everything was wood at the time, did not have a watering system. So it fell into disrepair. And then it was unsafe to take kiddos out there. Well, then 2019-2020 happened and we shut down. It did not take very long for that garden area to go into her wildness again. And she truly did. Excuse me, I'm using a pronoun, sorry. And so then Tama and I, when we were allowed back on campus, we stood at the gate and went, oh my, oh my, oh my. And just kind of was trying to think on what we can do to revitalize it. We had no money, there's no funding, blah, blah, blah. Dr. Garrett dangled a carrot in front of my nose, knowing that I have a passion for gardening and a passion for kiddos. And that carrot was a grant from Blue Cross
Foundation.
Yeah, Foundation Community Transformation Grant. It was a lot of money to me because I can work on a pretty tight budget. We were able, with that grant money, then to go ahead, Russ. Let's see if we can start some. Okay, this is what she looked like. Actually, there was a beautiful silver maple at the end of this area and between these two wings, but that tree was compromised. She was rotten in the middle. She had to come out. Shared that with Denise. Denise was totally aware of it, but it needed to be brought down by an arborist. It wasn't something that custodial staff would do, 100-year-old tree, but couldn't stay for two reasons. It was compromised. It was going to be a wind blow, and it shaded almost all of that area. So Denise managed to get an arborist who took the tree out. I was so excited because Jay-Z Savage and Kurt came down and got that wood and repurposed it at our woodworking shop here at the high school. Anyway, so this is what we had. We had rudimentary skills, but a lot of community help. And I'm not going to mention names. I mean, I could be here all night if I talked about how the garden came about to be used. That greenhouse was sitting back there by the shop. It had been sitting there forever. I've been eyeballing it when it was down by the programs office. Ryan Smathers and a group of city and law enforcement volunteers will manage to bring it into the garden. So here we are. We have beds, we have a greenhouse, we have all this energy and excitement. And I just went around and picked brains. And I'm pretty good about just knocking on doors because I believe people will either say yes or they will say no. And so came about that we were able then to put up a schedule and invite the staff out with their students. I promised Denise that I would hold to curriculum standards. I would ask the teachers when they would sign up what subject matter they wanted me to touch on. I'm not going to brag about this, but I guess I'm just gifted by God that I can just about turn anything into a lesson. So whether it be algebra, and we design a geometrically designed salad bar, or whether it's engineering, we just seem to make it work because I do know that the garden will go away if we don't stay to something, some standards, some knowledge and teaching that the teachers can take back into the classroom and expound on or build on or come back and revisit. Way too much fun, just way too much fun. Next slide, Russ. The cadets get a slide all to themselves because I tell you, if it weren't for the academy, I would probably not have enough volunteers to come down in the spring and in the fall. In the spring to ready the garden for the kids to come in, and in the fall to prepare the garden for winter. Great. I mean, it's always been such a blessing. The cadets themselves, male and female, and then their staff sergeants. But because I can't stand to not teach, they get a lesson, even when they're cleaning up or they're building or they're preparing. And the wonderful thing is, we always seem to have something for them to take back. And I understand they have a greenhouse up at the academy now, so we send stuff. And in fact, that tech sergeant with this group of young ladies this fall who prepped the garden for winter took one of our silver maple trees that was in a pot that needed to just go someplace and get planted. He was really excited. The ladies, because we always have extra produce at the end of the year, it just seems like the holidays start coming and it's time for the kiddos to not come out. It's cold. So they dug potatoes. They still took some tomatoes. We had quite a bit of produce, and we went over to the senior center, and that's a picture of them with a wagon full of produce for the seniors at the meal site. And, that benefits them as well. This is community service that they're required to get, but anytime that they can engage in the community, it's wonderful. And the seniors just love it. They just start talking to them. All right, Russ, next. So like I said, it's work. And some of the kids are like, I don't want to work. And I go, that's fine. How are you at stacking rocks? And I said, I need those rocks, but I need them kind of stacked. You just have to think on what is going to encourage a child to engage. Whether it be, here's a shovel. I need a hole. We're going to plant a tree. Oh, I can dig. And especially our campus used to be part of the old lime quarry. And so they go about 6 to 8 inches down and they hit red brick. And you would think, Jenna, that they had struck gold. It just amazes me. So then that's always a lesson. Okay, Russ. Senior projects. I love it when the seniors come down and say, is there something I can do for the garden? Everything from murals to planting produce, harvesting, preparing that, turning that into a product that was sold for the Safe and Sober party that year, to a flower bed. Even if they just, I haven't gotten any of them to come down and engage in activity yet, but there is potential there. County fair entries and exhibits, that opportunity is growing each year when the kids come in and get vegetables, fruits, flowers to take down to our fair. Senior meal site visits and donations of our produce. We have open houses, weedathons. For the last 2 years, in order to generate funds, we have gone down to the Orofino Farmers Market. It's kind of a challenge because I have to schedule kiddos and I'm not going to be a babysitting service. So I share that with parents and I have to have 2 kids at each time. But this last summer was quite delightful down at the farmers market. So that generates some funds for us. I mentioned Clearwater County Juvenile Services opportunities because I am willing to work with staff there for some of our kids to get their required community service hours. It's kind of a challenge sometimes, but I'm willing to do that. And just so much more. There's just so much potential. Okay, Russ, next slide. One of my most favorite things is when the kids realize that we have garter snakes and toads and tree frogs and spiders and mantises, and it's quite wonderful to teach them biodiversity and to teach them that insects can be beneficial as well as harmful too. This year we had squash bugs, so that was something that we had to determine how we were going to deal with. But I believe it's a haven for beneficial creatures, and it's just this little ecosystem that thrives on very little maintenance. Okay, Russ, next one. The garden, I tell this to everyone, the garden is not just a green playground, but an opportunity for adventure and learning. It will go away if it isn't a place of learning and enrichment. And so I'm quick to tell the kids that as well. It's wonderful to be out here. And if you want to take Mini Maniac and go sit in a corner and just kind of chill for a little bit, great. But at some point, engage with us. Okay, Russ, next one. Learning how to enrich the soil naturally. We compost our little garden hen mascots, manure and litter, garden bunnies, manure and litter. Composting is quite fun with kids as they build that. Conserving water, minimize insect and disease problems, and recycle nutrients through composting are examples of lessons students learn through their gardening, because I think it's important that they understand sustainability and not just taking care of the earth, but also taking care of themselves. So when we teach that, they are eating almost, I can't use the term organic because you have to go through a bunch of paperwork to do that. We go naturally grown food that is going to benefit you health-wise. All right, Russ. And then we always give the kids opportunities to share their enthusiasm. So with our open houses, we'll have parents and children, community volunteers scheduled to invite people in and to just share with them what we do. Like I said, there is so much. It's a little quick slideshow just because I know we're on time constraints. But if any of, especially you new members, want to sit down, have a cup of coffee sometime, I will bore you to death. No, I will not bore you. I guarantee you. But here's probably a couple of the most important things. The school district doesn't fund the garden. We managed it through that wonderful grant opportunity This will be our 5th growing season this spring, and we need some repairs. I'm not going to ask you for money because I know you don't have it. But if you would join me, I am not good at digging up grant writers, funding opportunities and that. And so if you have any ideas you could share with me on how to do that, better yet, if you have a person, because this is what I do. I teach, and I don't even use these books anymore. These are for my friends that I twist their arms and say, please come in and shadow me. You will have so much fun.
What do you need, Tammy?
I need a team. And that was when I came in this spring with Denise. I was actually supposed to retire from the garden this year, according to my husband. But I think he realizes that it is such a benefit to me because it's like therapy. And then, of course, that benefits him, right? And so he kind of realizes that group of people hasn't risen up yet. But I do need it because one person, I mean, I am limited. Just think if we had a team. And so, Russ, go to the next slide, please. My vision for a team is a minimum of 3 people, 3 volunteers, individuals with a heart for the education of children and adults in the wonders of horticultural practices and horticultural. I wish there was a word for everything. A team leader, every team needs a border collie. And then that person would probably be the school. Keep in touch with Denise, Lindsay, the teachers. Really need a grant and fundraising expert. We're blessed because what we bring in at the farmers market and thank you, Jenna. What we bring in at the farmers market and through donations, we have such a wonderful community. Does keep us in seed. It keeps us in supplies. We are math in the garden. We're pretty basic. Pencil and paper plate and a bunch of bean seed. But it still costs. My friends and I pretty much out of pocket. But you know, anyone that works in a school district is very much out of pocket, isn't it? So that's what I need, Miss Chris. Need a team. And I'm not very good at it. I have had the opportunity to jot down some names and numbers of people I met in the last 2 farmers markets that say, we're new to the area, we want to get involved. And so my plan is this January after the holidays, calling those people and saying, let's get together. If you were serious, it's not scary. I will not use the word teach anymore because I found out people just back off. So I use share activities with the kids. For some reason, teach just is scary. I don't know. Successes this year, probably the one thing that I wanted to try that was just blew me away watching it was a reading buddy opportunity. We have 3 first grade classrooms. We have 3 fourth grade classrooms. All of those kiddos had heard this story as a kindergartner. So the 4th graders came in, a class of 4th graders engaged with a class of 1st graders, scheduled by the teachers. They're amazing. I brought towels and blankets and they just found their comfortable spots. And the 4th graders read this book to the 1st graders. 1st graders were reading along with them. And then we had a pumpkin science activity or something, but that just was amazing to me to watch those kiddos engage together. And so we do everything A to Z. I mean, whether it be biology to social sciences. I mean, when you're planting spud, you have to talk about the great Irish potato famine, don't you? Our kids don't realize how quickly their world could change if their food source went away. Now, I'm not into scaring children, but I like for them to know where their French fry comes from and what they would do if their French fry weren't there. So I think that in a nutshell, I just want to share with you, this growing season was the most challenging growing season. Our automatic watering system, it's 5 years old, needed some repairs, so I didn't use it this year. I don't even think Denise knows that. So we were back to hand watering as we were our first year. The configuration of that garden is amazing because it still hasn't had a killing frost. When you have a brick wall in the back and all of that composite material, but at 110 degrees in Orofino, that back wall was 120 degrees. So it was really a challenge to keep things growing this year. I tell the kids we never fail. In gardening, you don't have failures, you don't have mistakes, you have experiments. And so we talked about the squash bug problem we had. We talked about what can we grow if we know that we're going to have extreme heat and drought conditions. And so, I mean, every gardener, every year is different if you're a gardener. Greenhouse, I also wouldn't mind having a greenhouse expert. So the ladies of the local ladies, Clearwater Compulsive Gardeners, have been wonderful because I don't do flowers. And my adage is, can't eat it. But they have helped, and Kathy at the flower shop, Mike and Joni Mount had a lot of help. So I'm hoping this is the year that we really truly utilize that greenhouse. We've had some upgrades to it. It should be sufficient now. Ventilation, heat, lighting. And kids don't know it yet, but I would like to have like a bedding plant open house and bring in some funds with that. Peck does a great job with theirs. So I'm gonna go pick some brains there. But so as you know, I'm already talking about this spring. I'm already pouring through seed catalogs, and with that also too, we do seed saving. But it would just be really wonderful to have a team of people. A team of people is always so much better. I don't know why, I just haven't had some wonderful volunteers. Adults as well as teens and kiddos. The kiddos will see that gate open this summertime, and they've been told, if you see the gate open, the volunteers in there, you can stop. They'll just come in, pull some weeds, mess around, you know, but just really need that. Oh, another thing, and I'll talk to Denise about it, but just one of my visions is had quite a few children, and they're with their parents okay, that want to take it a little further. They'd like to be part of like a little garden club group. Now, this would be something that would be worked out with Denise, but maybe those kids that last hour of the day or whatever. 4-H is involved, Girls and Boy Scouts are involved. 4-H baking group does a fundraiser for us every year. They take our zucchini and make zucchini bread. And it's a win-win because they have a community service requirement, and then it benefits us as well. But I think that's it. Just appreciate your support. I really do appreciate your support.
Well, I have to say, when I saw your name on the agenda Thursday, it was like the smile that came to my, my heart is warmed by your willingness to continue. But it
Yeah.
also, I'm afraid because I have a similar issue with skiing. And so
Yeah.
can you get out? Can you build that team? And Jen is helping build that team to lighten that load. But I think targeting the folks that said that they would be interested at the farmers market, those are like-minded folks.
Right.
It makes a lot of sense.
Right. And they're not all new to the area. Some have just been freed up, whether early or because of retirement or And so I'm excited about that. I'm a little nervous because I think, gosh, maybe I'm hard to work with. Maybe that's how come no one wants to come in or something. But I will in January, and I'll keep you apprised then as to how that works out. Because, oh my gosh, just a team of people, a simple schedule. They can
Have you
bust
reached
it
out like to Rotary Club or any clubs like that?
Rotary's been wonderful, not in manpower
Yeah.
after the initial establishment, but they have been a wonderful source of equipment. They bought all of our hoses
Oh,
when
wow.
we first
Yeah.
started. But here's the other thing. Almost all of my friends and people I know it's really hard to get down and get back up. And I tell them, you don't have to get down then, you don't. But our Rotary Club has been, I haven't picked on them for
Service
labor
hours, yeah.
wise, but I could go. I have made a presentation to
Yeah.
them, Teresa, and so maybe it's time to go back.
Yeah, maybe they don't realize you need man hours as well as financial support,
Yeah.
so.
But anyway, I also appreciate like my biannual report. Thank you for, I never intended that. That was not something in the scribbles on the notes, to report. But of course I should. It's part of the district. Here is the final, I would love to see this before I go to my grave. I would love to see junior high and high school involved to some capacity. But with that, we will need to take some of that front lawn because it's just wasted real estate. All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Tammy.
you.
Thank you.
We do appreciate you.
Thank you.
Anyone
And the
can call
garden.
me or email me anytime if you want to visit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesse is online, so he wanted to make sure you guys know he
Okay.
passed during the presentation. He is available online now. He's plugged in.
Okay. Policy updates.
All right. It's getting easier.
Yes, it
Mhm.
is. We noticed that.
Reminder at the top,
Still
row
struggle with how
4,
to filter this darn thing.
Are we starting with first or second reads?
probably second read.
Second.
So if you click on that link in B4, and then when you leave this view, you have to close it. So the first row is 2650. That is the new process for accepting credit from students who transfer into the district or charter from homeschool or an unaccredited private school. And that created a process with a curriculum review team to evaluate a student's materials that they had, proof of completing courses, and it outlines the whole process there. The prior to that, all we had was a 3,000 policy, which just makes a pretty vague reference and leaves it up to the principal alone. This would put a whole process in place for that.
So I had the opportunity to visit with some parents about this, and the bottom line, the question is instead of taking a policy that is almost restrictive, does it make sense for us to have an entrance exam so that tying back to the PLC and that core competency, if we had an incoming freshman, could that incoming freshman take a test? And okay, yes, you can come in at this level versus working through a documentation review process that may or may not exist and may have all varying levels. So that would be the only
And where would the test come from?
us. It would be our standard test.
So in theory, yes, some schools have had end of course assessments. and would allow that. Typically, it's as one, one mechanism to earn a credit. Across the board, that would, we're a long ways from having a process like that, so students come in with coursework that they've taken of all kinds of courses. And so we don't have those assessments in place. We don't have a way currently to assess a student for a comprehensive,
We don't have
end
a-
of course.
We don't have a final exam for math.
Not in every
We don't.
course, no. In some courses we do, some teachers have but those are teacher generated, end of course or final exam. But just in some core classes. Earning a
How
credit-
many students a year are we looking at that are
Or it's
requesting to come
rare
in?
for us.
Okay.
We have them from all levels, not just high school. This
Okay.
is most,
Yeah, just
most important for transcribing credits.
Okay.
I would be very leery of just using an assessment for that purpose. Right now, we're accredited through Cognia. When we issue credits, in our district, they've had to put in the seat time. They've passed the course, with all those requirements. So if we were going to have an assessment be, like a major part of that, we would really need to make sure we had high quality assessment and, really vet that process. But it could be part of a process. Districts have used that. It's typically in large districts, we could look at West Ada or Boise and see how they do it. If we did something like that, we would also have to look at, or we also should look at, any other student, should be able to do the same thing. So if you were going to issue credit for a student coming in that had no documentation, for example, based on an assessment, then your student should probably also have that afforded to them.
So you could test out of a class?
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. So in the gifted and talented program, is that something that is a conversation around? I'm just thinking about a young man that my son was the same age of, and he tested out of a grade and ended up leapfrogging. So, and I think that's different than what you're talking about.
Yeah, similar though,
But
in
it's
some
similar,
ways.
similar.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it depends on the situation, and that's done in various ways, but also depends on the grade level. But sometimes students are, really, far advanced. Maybe one factor might be their standardized tests, and they're off the chart on their standardized tests. Then, like I said, that's rare, but that would be a conversation with a family and really evaluating what's best for this child based on all kinds of their social,
Right.
where they fit, how old they are, what the parents' goals are. It's nice now in our systems that students really have the ability to advance quickly if they want to,
I wonder whether the flexibility that our current policy has around this which is principal review, if that affords us a better space than a more prescribed and rigid process that this outlines. Just a thought from what I've learned.
Sure.
So it would be my own.
It's to Teresa's question, it's not often, that we have students, and sometimes it's not just homeschool students. Sometimes they are homeschooled students, but it might be a student that comes from another district, for whatever reason they're behind. Maybe they had to miss, part of a year for family situation or whatever. And we have to evaluate their transcripts or progress in curriculum. And
It
you
seems
recall
like-
the homeschool conversation we had where we have greater flexibility for homeschool students.
It seems like this still takes into account that review by the principal, but it just kind of provides some structure to
It
some
does.
guidelines for them
Yeah.
and creates more of a group that's kind of considering it rather than just one person
Right.
doing it.
Mhm.
And so more of a collaborative approach to, and giving that group some guidelines.
times we've had success is when families have had really good documentation. They've done a thorough job of, either they pay for an accredited curriculum. If they're paying for an accredited curriculum, and that's easy for us because usually we can transcribe those credits. When it's difficult is when they don't have that documentation for whatever reason. Especially in high school. It's a little easier earlier. If they're younger, if it's an elementary or even junior high, it's easier for us to place them based on age or close to their age with a parent conversation. And then we have to work to, if they're behind, catch them up, fill those holes. But at high school, when it comes down to transcribing credits, earning a high school diploma, according to the state guidelines, we should be fairly consistent in how we do that.
One of the questions that was brought up was in the credit from homeschools will be accepted only when a like course is offered in the district. Does that in the district include IDLA offerings?
I would think so, especially with electives. You'd want to have some flexibility. If you can grant elective credit for almost anything, so they meet the requirements. Might be a little difficult in a math, science, English if it was way out. Like the state's wanting to make sure that we keep personal finance and econ standards, and that doesn't become a math class. So if you had something like that, that might be a stretch.
Yep, those are the big comments that I have around that in the conversation I had. We'll have a public comment after we get through these. Yep, we will. Yep. We don't take action at this point.
Any other questions on that one?
Nope.
Okay.
5407.
This is the one where this is the state's recommended policy for sick leave banks, and we do not want to adopt that. We have our own negotiated agreement, and it's referenced in our own policy at 5401. (2340F), as you can see and recall, I'm sure that's just they changed the numbers of the policy, aligned it with 2340. We clarified our approach, aligned it with our old policy regarding teaching sex education.
Yeah,
they've changed some language in there. I'm gonna open that one, see if I missed anything. I think that's about it.
Those are
that form.
potential gotchas is
Opt
what I
out.
remember.
Yeah, and there's opt-out form there. That's what F is.
F is the opt-out.
Mhm. And the one of the main changes, just is that we need to make sure that we really keep parents informed on that. It's the onus is on us to make sure parents know and have the option to opt out.
And that's done at time of registration, right?
Generally, we also ask our teachers when something, parents are, a lot of that stuff is, they're just signing paperwork, trying to get their student registered. So sometimes they forget about that or don't recognize it. So we ask our health teachers, for example, or school nurse, if she's doing it, to be very intentional about sending out that information. Here's what we're doing. And so parents have the ability to opt out. And we do have some.
Schedule-wise, is that part of the conversation of the parent teacher? You had what, 97% participation and almost 30% participation. Do those come up in prior to the student getting into that class again as a reminder, or
do the conversations come up
about this? Would a conversation around this opt-out opportunity come up prior to the student entering that class within the different timing of the year?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I mean it's
Okay.
just a
Just at the beginning.
notice at registration, and then from health teachers. The course is required. Then they just opt out of that particular section if they want to.
Mhm. I didn't see anything we forgot to.
Anything on 2340 questions? $24.15 is the IRI exemption. Those students, if they qualify for an IRI exemption, then they can also be exempt from dyslexia screeners. Change some language there
And that
also.
was clarity, that
Yeah.
added clarity. And created that niche for that
Right.
exception.
It's a new policy.
Mhm. And was there anything from the policy review that?
No.
No concerns?
No, you can just see the parts that have been struck through.
And do we need to pick in that one? Because it as building principal, or are you wanting us to insert?
Yeah.
We're needing to insert something there?
Let's see.
I lost my tab, hang
I
on.
did too. Where's that at?
On the 3281, the new policy.
3281?
Yeah, and the second paragraph.
I thought we were gonna hold off until that became law.
Okay.
Yes, that one. Thank you.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
hadn't got there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're pretty worried about that policy.
No,
and
that's perfect. That's
Extremely
good.
controversial.
Yeah.
Waiting.
And the laws went back and forth, and
Yeah.
it won't be a fun one, I'm sure.
No, they said that one probably won't.
Yeah, so my recommendation is that we just hold off until the
We
law
have
is
to.
clarified.
Yeah.
We have policies that protect our kids and adults from harassment and things like that. So
Okay.
I don't think anybody's in jeopardy because we don't have that policy, but it's definitely a messy.
Yeah, and the other one is just alignment with the don't boycott Israel
Yeah.
and government. Buy America. And I think so it'll be real interesting in my personal day life. The Buy America, Build America is going to have an impact as we move forward, and it'll be interesting to me to see if that affects education and some of our procurement, especially around school facilities.
That's all
Okay,
of,
so those are the second.
yep,
second
that's
reads.
all of.
So now we have to
second
close
read.
that and.
So when we
reopen the
get
track.
down to, when we get to action items later, my recommendation would be that we make a motion as as was presented, and that will include those things in column D, like 5401 to ISBA 5407 says stay with our own. That was the, that we have all those hold off until law, and this one we were just talking about. The others could be accepted, or you can read them if you'd like, one by one. That makes sense.
Yeah, that spreadsheet just closed automatically on me.
That's not possible.
It did. Okay,
That's what our students say.
I know. Get both hands off the, okay. Now, first read, November.
Yeah, you'll
1st
like
read.
this.
Yes, I did like it.
Much shorter. We're
Yes.
catching up.
Yeah. So 3297, right?
Yep.
We're holding off
And we're
on.
tabling that one.
Same. Yes. Right. If you look at 3265, there's quite a few changes in this. This is a cell phone policy, which we just adopted ours recently. Now ISBA's come out with a version. As you know, cell phone usage is popular right now in education. At our last leadership team, we went through this with leadership. And so what you see here in 3265, if you open that policy, are the revisions and selections that we would recommend, that the admin team recommends. So you can see, like, let's say the first section there where it says select all that apply, all of those apply except for number 9, in our opinion. And then if you scroll down,
So I was wondering, do we need to bolster ours with this?
we liked the format of this better. Ours was read more like procedures, you know. So what we did is included, as you scroll down further, which is way down below the green, you see first, second, third offense and enforcement. That came from our existing procedures. But the rest of this is aligned with ours and just a little written more like a policy. There are.
Oh, okay. It's not colored. Okay.
Right. I pasted that in from the other one.
It says prohibited from using in bathrooms, locker rooms, or changing rooms. Should that have like some sort of except as described in below? Like, I mean, because you say like, okay, you can use it during lunch and after school activities, but then it says not in bathrooms, locker rooms, or changing. I mean, should there be some
Is that
sort of
more
like
for a
clarification?
security reason of like people taking pictures or something in those? So,
Okay.
Yeah. And, you know, they are frequently used in especially restrooms, but we frequently have problems from that. So we really, we discussed that, and leadership felt like we should leave that as prohibited. So there's another way to say, no, you can't be taking a picture of somebody in the restroom or locker room for a variety of reasons. And one of them is you're not supposed to be using your cell phone in there. One of the big problems we have in the secondary schools is that students are getting out of class just for that purpose, to go to the restroom and use their phone. And so if they're not able to use their phone, in theory, right, in the restroom, that would could minimize some of that. And that was the main discussion there. That and pictures, which is already against the rules. You know, that's not new, but.
Right. I do like that it adds in the emergency piece. We talked about that at the conference with some of the sessions that we attended, and having the ability to allow that. I mean, that it's specifically called out in policy that that's prohibited, you know, not prohibited to use it in an event
I
of
think that's
emergency.
and like you're referencing, it's to alleviate, you know, parent concerns. If there was a major emergency, could my child get a hold of me?
I think that's, that probably was the biggest concern with the not allowing them was
Right.
the emergency, and this directly addresses that. So I like that.
We really tried to modify the policy just to protect instructional time, you know, not go crazy with restrictions, but just to protect instructional time. You can see under containment of devices, you know, they just need to take care of them. They can be contained anywhere. We don't need to collect cell phones, nothing like that.
I was going to ask that because right now the current is that they shouldn't have them in their pockets. And so that was discussed amongst the administrator that's.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
We didn't specifically talk about pockets, which we have talked about that in the past. So we could ask for more input on that. Has all the acceptable use stuff. One thing it talks about in here, and this is becoming more and more of a problem, is that students are not supposed to be using VPNs at school. So students frequently use VPNs to bypass the filtering at school. So if a student is using a VPN, and it's more, there's more of a problem at Timberline because the cell service is limited than there is here, because if you have decent service here, you could just use your own data. But this says that you're supposed to, if you're using it at school, supposed to use the network and not use a VPN. We're having a lot of students are
Gaming issue.
No, they're using VPNs for whatever reason, to access the internet, to bypass our system. But what's happening is, they're using VPNs that are malicious. And so they don't know it because they're just downloading free VPNs. But frequently, Mr. Miles is finding devices on our network that are actually being controlled by some other country, some other person from somewhere else to do malicious things with those devices. And students have no idea. They're just trying to bypass the filter. And as he puts it, when you use something that's designed to break the rules, you really can't trust the designer. So oftentimes they end up, their phones end up being compromised and they don't know. So that's a serious, everybody should be aware of that, using VPNs. If you use a reputable VPN at school, it's going to get blocked because our system will know it. So you're kind of, you have to use the network the way it's supposed to be. And especially if you're at Timberline, that limits use, and so.
And so there is a
I've seen
Wi-Fi
that.
that students connect to.
Yeah, I've seen that in Russ's reports.
Yeah. And it seems to be getting worse. We're having more problems with that. I think he'd probably say some of it is we're more aware, but it seems to be that phones are becoming more and more compromised. And for a while we were, Russell would call me and say, hey, so-and-so's phone. And sometimes you can tell because they name their phone or something like that. So I could talk to a student and say, hey, your phone's, somebody's got control of your phone. You need to get that VPN off there. It doesn't really seem to work with students. That one goes away. The next day they have a different one. So now if there's a VPN on there on a device like that, and we discover it because of that kind of traffic, it just gets blocked, and that device will no longer work on the network. So it's a big deal. They really need to comply. Like I said, it's more important for students at Timberline because of the weak cell service.
But a good incentive to not do it if you're not going to have service then.
Right. Other questions on that one?
No, I think it's a lot clearer. I like that one better.
And 2420 is it's just an annual review that needs to take place, right?
Yep.
That's how I read this.
2420 is our existing policy, Title I policy. It's on parent engagement. We have to review it annually and document that we review it annually. Mouthful. Cody didn't suggest any revisions. It's just for you to be aware of. And then, like I said, we document that we review it, approve it again. It goes through all the requirements of that family engagement policy with Title I. You can't really get very far outside of that anyway. It's a federal requirement. And that's all of that.
His report, yeah, this is awesome. His report was an eye opener around the percentage of students that are coming in with increase of 30, but a solid 20% of our population.
Yeah, we decreased that. We're back up to where we were, which is still high, but yeah, it's a tremendous, and ebb and flow. That's a huge amount of students.
Resource allocation.
For sure.
Okay. Any other policy conversations? Okay. ISBA takeaway. So I had full intentions of coming with a little assignment around mission development and lost track of my own life. So what I'd like to do is as stated earlier, we have our vision statement, our purpose, preparing the next generation to thrive. And Jason helped me think through this. And what I'd like to do is throw out, almost make it like a multiple choice, but then have an opening for your own ideas. But what I'd like to do is send you a document that thinking about that purpose of that vision statement. And then the mission statement I'm thinking about is for the board. So it's not revisiting the district mission or strategic plan, but just helping us sort of shape a little bit about what our mission is now that we have a full team and we seem to be all aligned in the direction that we're going. And that will set the stage for our December 16th strategic planning session with Phil. So if you're okay with that, I'll send you an email in the next couple of days And you'll have, some time. I'd like to have your input back by the end of the month so that I can work on getting a draft, literally a sentence out of those words, send it back out to you so that we have buy-in for that conversation on the 16th.
Okay.
Does that
Sounds-
sound like a
And we're meeting
worthwhile?
Phil at Timberline
Yes.
before. Okay, perfect.
Sounds good.
Okay. And then the protocol that came out of a session that you and Brian.
Yeah,
attended.
Brian and I were in this a session on board protocols, and he asked that we review this. So I don't know if you want to. This is our current board protocol that we adopted recently.
Mhm. Yeah,
I
saw
don't know
that.
if it was in policy before, but we went through it recently. But we didn't we didn't dive very deep into it. I don't recall a thorough discussion about it. So I don't know if you want to table that for when we have all of our board members, or just look through it on your own. It would be good, and especially with new board members, to go through it, review it.
Mhm. Yeah, I would encourage all of us to review it. What they learned and shared with me is that we have flexibility around how we shape our agenda and how we do conduct this business, not the business that we do, but how we conduct it. And I think one of the process challenges that I have had is this discussion and then public comment and executive session and then come back to action. And so I think if we could streamline this process around discussion, public input, action, move on to the next thing and sort of.
Yeah, that's how we
open-
do it for the city of Pierce.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't discuss it, then take action later.
Yeah, and
Yeah. So
what they learned is, and shared with me is that we have flexibility to change that, but we have this existing protocol. So we just need to figure out where do we want to make that adjustment and how does it, what makes the most sense for all of us, not just us here, but the team as well. So.
And it seems like a good discussion next time when we're talking about our mission and making sure is our protocols in alignment with whatever our mission's going to be? And is there anything that we need to add or change it, keeping whatever the mission's going to be and just kind of putting that all together, it kind of flows together.
Yep. And I think just bringing it top of mind, this wasn't brought to my attention, and we're new and fresh enough now. I think that it would be really good. And again, because we all sort of are similarly aligned and we're moving together in this team way, that we have an opportunity.
We also have a policy on the meetings themselves. Let's see, not just these procedures, but so we could, if you wanted, I could put 1,500, on the policy tracker, and we could review the policy. If we were going to change the order of the meeting or something like that, we'd want to take a look at that policy.
Yep.
I think my computer just deleted it,
Mm-hmm.
but that can't really
Can't do
happen, so I
that.
put it back.
Can't do that, right? Okay. And then we have, so there's a couple of homework items for all of us there. And then board meeting dates and locations. So you want to revisit the schedule?
Well, we're ready to set the next year. So let me get back there.
I
ahead.
would kind of like to put this off until December unless we can't.
We can.
Okay.
Yep.
That way, hopefully we have a full team and
That's a good idea.
It kind of feeds into that strategic planning piece in that conversation. So if we kind of tag it onto that work session as, and then we can make it an action item.
Okay.
Does that make sense, girls?
Yeah.
Okay. 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 Public comment. In full disclosure, I have one of my conversations was with Jenna.
So I'm Jenna, and the reason why I'm here is because of the homeschool transitioning credit adoption policy that's on the board. I have homeschooled 3 of my children who are all now part of the school. 2 of them transitioned over before high school, so credits weren't an issue. Credits were an issue with my high schooler. It was not an easy process. It is actually taken, he was accepted to go to school all last year, his junior year, and no credits were ever transferred. He was allowed to go to school, but nothing really happened. And this year was kind of a problem where he was told that that the school was not going to accept any of his credits. So that brings me to where we definitely need to have something that it's not a no. Like, we're just not even going to look at you. We're not going to talk about it. It's just a no on, we're not accepting credits, because that's where this kind of derived from at the beginning of this year. So that's a problem. I feel like we definitely need to have some kind of process. And I see that the process here now is looking at teachers, looking at each subject and reviewing for if it was appropriate, if it aligns. I just feel like that takes a lot of teacher time, where a simple placement test could do the job of that. When I homeschooled, I have taken many placement tests. I mean, there's many different schools out there that have placement tests to see where your child is at. So that's something I just did just for my own knowledge of where my child was at. So it's not a hard thing to find. You suggested maybe looking at Ada, something like that. I know that there's other schools that have simple placement tests in place. And maybe that should be something to be looked at. It makes the whole policy a lot easier if it was just a placement test. It would show. So I understand that a lot of homeschoolers have not been homeschooled well. And there are some that have been homeschooled very well. That placement test would just show that without having to look at each and every subject. My other point on that too is that a lot of the curriculum that I used was an accredited curriculum. I didn't pay to have it accredited. It's the same curriculum. So we're kind of looking at things like that too, that I just feel like the placement test just makes it easy. They either succeed or they don't. We're looking at mastery on knowledge, or there's no mastery on the knowledge. You had mentioned how many homeschoolers are trying to come in to the district. I met because I was part of the homeschooling community, I met with a bunch of the homeschoolers. The reason why you're not getting a lot of homeschoolers coming into the school is it's well known, and I'm not saying it's you or any other teacher around here or principal or superintendent, because there's been ones before you guys too. Homeschooling's not been an accepted thing from the school. There's been way too many homeschoolers that have been told no. And so they don't want to even try. I feel like there would be a lot more that would transition over. It's pretty common that people want to keep their children at home through grade school or even through middle school and then transfer them over to high school. That's not happening in our community. We have a lot of homeschoolers in our community, and that's not happening. And there's a reason why that's not happening. I feel like this school could grab a lot more of that homeschooling community attendance if it wasn't so hard. I could go through all the things I don't like about this policy if you wanted me to say it, but I really would strongly suggest to go back to your old policy that it's up to the principal and administer a placement test.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesse, I'm sorry, I forgot you were online.
It's been fun listening and not talking so much. I kind of enjoy it.
Yeah. Okay, we have a short executive session. And then we'll be back.
Do you need me to make a motion to?
So
I'll make
yeah,
a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74-206 1A and B.
I second.
roll call.
Okay. Trustee Saint Germain,
Yes.
trustee Craig, trustee Daniels,
Yes.
trustee Kepke,
Yes.
and trustee McIntosh.
Yes.
Okay. Phone. Jesse.
Yep. Just call my cell. I'm going to mute my computer and go to a different room.
Okay. Okay, back from executive session. We have no actions to report. Real quickly, before we get into action items, the Youth Challenge Academy. There's a Lewiston High School graduation and reception invitation to the board for December 13th. So I don't know if anybody would like to attend. Pass that down. I'm not able to attend, so.
Yeah, probably not.
Are you going to attend?
I'm hoping to.
Yeah. I
haven't been to
Oh.
one, so I would like to.
Yeah, I haven't either, but it's not.
Chris, maybe.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's nice that it's in Lewiston. Yeah. but-
Jason, you mind sending out just an email
Oh,
with
it
the
looks like it's
details?
on the 21st, but it's, you have to
Oh, what's the
RSVP by the,
13th?
you have to RSVP by the 13th.
Oh, okay.
It's right before Christmas, huh? 21st.
We can share that with everybody. Jesse, are you back with us?
Yeah, can you hear me? Hello? I can hear you guys.
Could you scan this in and send it out to everybody?
I can.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I think that's the best way to socialize it. Okay, so we have a few action items.
So is that your husband that's
You
gonna
didn't put
wrestle?
the, we don't have the policies
So you probably can't make a motion or vote.
on this
can you?
action.
No,
item.
I'll recuse myself.
I just realized that.
Hopefully Jesse's
let me
there.
look.
He
Can
needed.
Nope.
Chris as the board
Okay.
member
Sorry.
or as the board chair?
No,
I
my
just
fault.
realized it myself.
Jesse will be there.
Is
Yeah,
he-
I'm here, guys.
Okay. there it
Okay,
is.
cool. Very cool.
It was a speaker thing.
Gotta find my agenda.
Let's not then,
Right.
and then
Yeah,
I'll
why
just
not?
make sure it's on there
I'm not
next
going
time.
to.
We can do the same thing. We'll just have that motion next
Yep.
time.
New hires and separations. Can we get a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the new hires and separations as presented.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I'll recuse myself from the vote on this one.
I'm glad you're here, Jesse. Okay. No further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Welcome aboard. Thanks for serving. Mentor stipends.
I'll make a motion to approve the stipends as presented.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Is there a reason why they're different amounts?
Yes. Primarily, it's determined by the needs of the individual based on principal recommendation, how much time and effort. Generally, new teachers to the profession require more, but not always. Sometimes in a specific subject like special education or something else, they might require more. So those ones usually have come in at that tier 2, and we have 2 tiers, and they're in our negotiated agreement.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Okay, we agreed to have the board meeting dates and locations discussion in December. And the OES counseling service additional day. We had discussed that last month.
I make a motion that we increase the OES counselor days from 1 day per week to 2 days per week, effective October 30th.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just glad we're getting some counseling and more counseling.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Okay, anything specific for the December 16th beyond what was already discussed?
Do we need to have our policy in
We don't have
action?
it, it was
Sec-
missed.
Yeah, so that's for next meeting.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wrote that down. I'll make
Okay.
sure it's on the next one. That was my fault that it wasn't.
And the
on there.
meeting will be at Timberline. When do we get the early graduation request from? the-
It'll be at Timberline.
Oh, they'll come out to
Mhm,
Timberline.
they're gonna
Okay.
come to Timberline, yep.
Do we have a special meeting or just a regular in December?
We have a work session with
Yes.
Phil for board strategic planning.
What time is that?
I think it's gonna be 4:30,
Oh, we're still, okay. We're still
but I will
defining that.
confirm.
And we're thinking same location? Or
Timber-
we'll-
Yes,
awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
we are currently finding them a place to stay, so.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
Is he wanting to stay on the hill?
Yeah, I'm trying to, I'm connecting him with the Deos for the lake house.
Hmm.
There's a couple of them coming up, so it'll be a nice place to stay.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I know Phil's a runner walker, so he can run the trail.
Hmm.
Okay. Thank you for coming.
We make a motion to adjourn.
Mhm.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Aye. Thanks for joining us, Jesse.
Bye, guys. Sorry I was late. Little winter storm on my drive.
Yeah, no doubt. Bye.
Bye.